Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Marshall. I'm the facilitator of the Grassy Plains Network. These days, we're part of the Victorian National Parks Association. We, you know, we're here to advocate for grasslands, big and small, across Victoria. This is our 33rd Grassy Talk, so we've been doing these this is our fourth year now, which is fantastic. We have a meeting at the end of this after a 10-minute break, so I encourage everyone to come along and just talk grasslands afterwards. In the meantime, before I introduce Vanessa and Sarah, I should say that I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people, but I'd like to pay my respects to all the First Nations people who have done hundreds of thousands of years of living on country, grassland country, across all different parts of Victoria, whether it's alpine or arid or coastal, or out in the bay when the bay was once a grassland. And yes, to pay my respects to them and to, I suppose, express my regrets at the fact that us colonial invaders have done such a comprehensive job of trashing such a remarkable ecosystem so thoroughly in such a short period of time. But hopefully we can walk country together and to work together and actually make things better. And while our grasslands are still in decline, at least we're starting perhaps to slow that curve, which would be a remarkably good thing. So we have Vanessa Hutchins and Sarah Box from the city of Wyndham. Vanessa, and now of course, do I have my notes with me? I do, but Vanessa is, to get your title correct, Senior Land Management Officer, and Sarah is her right-hand person, I suppose, the Environmental Projects Officer. They run the City of Wyndham's interim management program that's focused on the Western Grassland Reserve. So that's a program that's done in conjunction with private landholders and the Melbourne Strategic Assessment team in DECA. Vanessa's been in her role for 6 years now, and Sarah since 2023. They both come to us surprisingly from Mount Rothwell at one point. So they are both very strong advocates for threatened species generally. Vanessa's had about 15 years experience doing the hard work of being a grassland warrior, and Sarah slightly less. But I'd like to welcome them both. We will have questions at the end. I'm sure you can, if you're busting to ask a question, you can interrupt them. But let's otherwise put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to that. Yeah, indeed. I think that's about it. Vanessa, Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, Adrian. I'll just start by sharing my screen and making sure that everyone can see it.
Looking good.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, thanks, Adrian, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and coming to listen to our presentation tonight. My name is Vanessa Hutchins. As Adrian just said, I'm the Senior Land Management Officer for Wyndham City Council.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sarah Box, and I'm the Environmental Projects Officer. And I've been in this role working in Western Grassland Reserve for about 3 years now.
Throughout this presentation, we're going to assume everyone logged on tonight understands Western Grassland Reserve and the purpose behind it. So this is all about the interim management of the Western Grassland Reserve while it's still in private ownership within the realm of Wyndam Council. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia. We'd like to acknowledge Wadawurrung as the traditional owners of the lands on which we're presenting on today and our works have taken place. Wyndham City Council also operates on Boonwurrung country, And we acknowledge both Wurrung and Wurrung people have, for thousands of years, cared for this country. We pay respect to their ancestors and elders who always have and always will care for country and community today and for future generations.
Okay, so here is a list of topics that we will be covering today. It's ranging from Council's perspective and management of the Western Grassland Reserve to challenges and innovative techniques that we've been able to implement over the past 5 years. As Adrian mentioned, please hold on to your questions until the end or write them in the chat and we can read them out when we are finished.
Our interim management is funded by the MSA levy, and this map is a broad view of Melbourne that shows the urban growth boundary in the red line. The blue shapes are where the MSA levy applies to developers. To the left, you can see Wyndham Council boundary outlined by the blue line, and the Western Grassland Reserve is the bright green shape within the same area. I'm not going to go into any further detail regarding the MSA levy, as I know the legends at Parks Victoria delved into this in their Grassy Talks presentation late last year. So if you do want to know any more about the MSA levy and how that works, I do recommend giving their presentation a watch on the Grassy Plains Network site. Now focusing in on the reserve itself. So we can see the reserve is in 4 different local government areas. Almost 12,000 hectares is in Wyndham, 1,500 hectares in Melton, 1,000 hectares in Geelong, and 680 hectares in Moorabool. The blue lines on this map show the different council area boundaries. And this reserve will actually take up 20% of Wyndham's entire land mass. So we see this as a really big significant asset to have in our backyard. For this reason, Wyndham Council has been heavily involved in the reserve for a while, as well as the future planning and development of the site and its surrounding areas.
Okay, so around 15 years ago, Wyndham City established the Land Protection Grant Scheme, and this was to support the residents in adopting sustainable farming and land management practices. The aim of the scheme is to provide landowners and land managers with the knowledge and incentives needed to implement sustainable land management, while also ensuring that biodiversity can be protected and enhanced on their property. There are currently 300 eligible properties across Wyndham City and around 62 within the Western Grassland Reserve. The scheme provides practical on-ground support to help these landholders care for their land, including reducing environmental risks, protecting important natural assets, and improving long-term land health. Supported activities include weed control, some fencing to protect sensitive areas, and planting of native trees and vegetation. So overall, the scheme aims to protect biodiversity while continuing to support sustainable and productive farming practices.
So our Land Protection Grant Scheme has been funded by Council since 2010 when it first began, and our interim management funding leverages this existing grant opportunity. So we receive funding through a Victorian Common Funding Agreement. The government funds interim management through Melbourne Strategic Assessment's Nature Next Door program. Our first agreement was from 2020 to 2024, and it was successful. So we're now well into our second agreement, which will end in June 2027. We hope and have plans to continue beyond this timeline as well. The funding also allows us to employ one full-time Environment Projects Officer position, which is Sarah, to help deliver the Land Protection Grant Scheme to PA07 properties. Now, PA07 relates to the Wyndham Planning Scheme, where properties with Public Acquisition Overlay 7 will become part of the Western Grassland Reserve. So we have 2 pools of money for delivering our grant. We have a council pool and a DECA pool for those PA07 properties. Due to its success, there are now similar agreements in place with Melton City Council and the City of Greater Geelong.
Okay, so how the Land Protection Grant Scheme works is that it's split between the PA07 properties and all the other eligible properties. Some of the requirements being land size, where they sit within the urban growth boundary, and if they're inside the green wedge zone. We engage with the owners of these properties via an annual mail out at the start of each calendar year. It includes details on how to apply and what's on offer. If they do not apply, but we feel as if the grant will benefit them, we can target call the landowners. Unfortunately, we don't have any way of accessing information for the leaseholders, so we rely on the owner to pass the grant information on. You can see on this table here that the land manager grants are very similar between the PA07 and Wyndham, whereas the contractor grant varies. So if inside Western Grassland Reserve, the land managers only have to contribute 15% of the total project cost, with Wyndham paying the remaining 85% with DECA funds. The land manager's contribution can be paid as an in-kind contribution. An in-kind contribution is a non-financial contribution made by the land manager through things like labour, on-ground works, or changes to land management practices that directly support the project outcomes. So instead of providing a cash payment, the land manager contributes time, effort, or resources that have a recognised value. So this approach ensures shared responsibility for the project while supporting effective and mutually beneficial outcomes. So this map here shows which parts of the Western Grassland Reserve that have been acquired by the state government and is currently being managed by Parks Victoria, which you can see highlighted in blue. It also details where we, Wyndham City, implement interim management while the land is still in that private ownership. So this is shown in the black dotted areas. It is important to note that this does change year to year, and this map is for our 2025-2026 properties. Similar to the map shown earlier, the green border is future Western Grassland Reserve, and the blue border is Wyndham's border.
Our actual interim management plan, our funding from the DECA MSA team allows us to apply various land management work on the PA07 properties that protect and enhance the existing ecological values. So these include various types of weed management works, fences, grazing regimes, controlled burning, pest animal control, and also community engagement opportunities and flora surveys. We are required to submit an annual works plan to the MSA team. They do need to approve that before money is transferred and we can begin implementing the plan. If our annual plan changes, we do have to email to notify or request permission for those changes. We report on absolutely everything, so contracts, invoices, herbicide reports, detailed shape files of works, everything is recorded and submitted. All of the works do have to be approved by MSA. So MSA have been very reasonable, particularly as we're working with local farmers and landowners. You never really know what problem or opportunity might pop up. So change does actually happen a lot. We have a good team here at Wyndham as well, and the MSA, as I said, have been supportive, and this has allowed us to remain adaptable and innovative in our work. Our program partners include DECA, Agriculture Victoria, the Arthur Rylah Institute, Parks Victoria, City of Greater Geelong, Melbourne City Council, multiple universities and various community groups. And throughout all of this, there's obviously quite a lot of challenges. The first one being safety. We suffer a lot from serrated tussock seed storms. Wildfires are a risk, and the wildfire risk increases once properties are acquired and grazing is removed, which allows significant weedy biomass to really rapidly grow. Vandalism and illegal rubbish dumping, including of hazardous materials, even unwanted pets that then go off and cause pest animal populations. Dumped cars also posing a very big fire risk. And the dumping itself is not just costly and unsightly, but it often results in vegetation being lost and destroyed it's being dumped on top of. The establishment of Western Grassland Reserve itself, we know the acquisition is slow. And what is acquired are scattered parcels over a really large area. And then that leaves the properties in between to reinfest weed and pest species, but also increased fire hazards for those that still live out there.
Another challenge that we face is that there's still a lack of community awareness for the Western Grassland Reserve among our residents. Awareness is increasing, and we have been keeping the conversation going both internally and externally. We want to promote a positive Western Grassland Reserve and gain support from our residents to protect it. We are excited for volunteering opportunities, and we want the community to be as well. Will there be a future Western Grassland Reserve land care group, or will there be a Friends of group? Another challenge we have is weed spread. So there are high density weed infestations in privately owned paddocks that are unmanaged. This will continue to threaten Parks Victoria parcels and vice versa. As farming is still active, the weed seeds are spread quite easily, and this is concerning for African thistle and cane needlegrass, which are emerging weeds in our region.
Because the Western Grassland Reserve and Wyndham Council itself is located within the core infestation of serrated tussock, Agriculture Victoria do not apply any enforcement for weed control. Wyndham Council also cannot apply any enforcement for any weeds that are listed under the Kelp Act, the Catchment and Land Protection Act, which is specifically only for state government to enforce. We also have plenty of land bankers, which result in short-term leases to local farmers. So often farmers are only getting maybe maximum 12-month leases. So for them, there's no security, there's no incentive to even put in their 15% for weed control, because there's no incentive to apply sustainable land management practices if they might only be there for 12 months. There's also been, over the last 15 plus years, a lot of negativity and distrust towards government because of the public acquisition overlay. There's also been confusion and conflicting advice given to the landholders. We always approach landowners with caution, and we always make sure we respect people's wishes. We've been told times before never to contact people ever again, and we certainly respect that.
We also come across unfortunate situations with stock and wildlife. In a peri-urban landscape, there are often absent farmers and those who may not know better just yet. So we report our concerns to Agriculture Victoria, and we're often moving kangaroos off the road, rescuing joeys, and we're also known for rescuing sheep as well.
The other challenge is just the pure size and scale of this project. It is ginormous. It is very unique. There is no one solution or one management option. With this landscape comes various management issues, including UXOs, which are literally unexploded bombs from decades ago Defence Force training. We have historical dumped rubbish, heritage overlays, cultural heritage, dense weed infestations, scattered acquired properties, and a lack of water. And all of that is still home to so many threatened flora and fauna species that need to use it for their habitat. This slide here is showing the interface our community will have with the Western Grassland Reserve. So this is the eastern boundary of the reserve that's within Wyndham. So the Western Grassland Reserve is the green shaded area to the left of the image. The yellow cutting through the centre of the image is the future Outer Metropolitan Ring Road, which unfortunately is not likely to happen anytime soon. Therefore, this will go from grassland straight to people's backyards. Development, it does happen slow and in sections. So the plan for the road to be the barrier between the reserve and the urban growth is a good plan and a good segmentation. But this, because it's not happening anytime soon, this will leave our community at an increased risk of wildfires. This is a known issue. We hope can be improved in future situations where something like this arises. But currently, you can see our urban growth rapidly expanding, and this is something that we'll need to be aware of.
Okay, so here we have a couple of photos that show some of our challenges. The photo on the left shows us two things. Firstly, houses are bordering cropping paddocks, affecting the farmer's ability to continue production. And secondly, before a crop can be established, the farmers are required to eradicate weeds such as serrated tussock. And when farms border residential dwellings like this, the process can become challenging due to the differing expectations and concerns from the nearby residents. Issues such as herbicide application, the mere presence of cattle, and other normal farming activities can create tension at the urban-rural interface. And the photo on the right is just an example of one of the severe seed storms we've had. This is a house that is located next to the Western Grassland Reserve, and the tussock seed piled up around their property like this. So this was their front door. Okay, so when working in a high density weed infested area, it's one thing to walk into a 500 hectare paddock with no data and scratch your head thinking, where on earth do we start? It's another thing to walk into that same paddock, but understanding it's also being consistently grazed by cattle or sheep and managed by a farmer that has no long-term security, yet has the final say on the paddock's management. We've spent years maintaining and creating good relationships with many of these local farmers. It can take a bit to earn their trust, and we leverage our existing relationships with those who are on the grant to spread the word and recommend others to reach out to us. It's a tactic that we've used successfully over the years. Lots of different advice has been given to these land managers over the past 15 years. Some are too scared to do anything to their land. They won't do it out of fear, and some don't do it for their own reasons. So, for example, one farmer's plan was to simply reduce stock numbers as the weeds take over. We have set some rules when applying grant funding on private property. If the farmer will not remove grazing, we will not apply flupropionate. The big question is, can we beat serrated tussock? And I think yes, we just need to do it right. If we're going to apply flup at scale, we have about a 3-year window to fix that paddock before the herbicide wears off and the tussock comes back. At the end of the day, we do need to live with it, but we can create resilient paddocks where it'll struggle to invade and survive. And that's our ultimate goal. Our current weed management plans are to burn and then spray, or spray and burn, whichever option works well with weather conditions or the land manager's priorities. Then we take grazing off for a couple of years and we apply native C4 grass seed and some C3 seed and wildflowers if you can get it. The 3-year window is critical. We've seen paddocks successfully treated for tussock using aerial flup, with follow-up surveys showing the tussock density reduced to almost 0. However, within a year, once the flup had worn off, a repeat survey occurred and the tussock density raised back to 80%. So this occurred because the stock were never removed and the land was never given the chance to recover. So DECA's MSA program provides the funding to council, not just for weed control, but also for innovative practices, as we all continue to learn how to improve this landscape. We will now outline some of the innovative projects that we've implemented over the past few years. Significant time and effort has been invested into designing and trialling these different approaches to manage the large-scale weed infestations across such an extensive area. These approaches support land managers who continue to actively farm within the reserve, while also delivering long-term benefits for the health and the resilience of the grassland.
Our first one is our rapid assessment survey. Before I jump into this, I will say big thank you to Catherine Sheffield from Agriculture Victoria Research. She sets all of this up and turns it into usable, readable data that we can display and use on our GIS projects. So how the rapid assessment surveys are designed is we use satellite aerial imagery captured by the Sentinel-2 satellite. And this is used to create a grid of points across a property or a specific survey area. There's one point at every 40 metres. So in the map on the right, you can kind of see each circle is a point. They're evenly spread across the entire property. The surveys are performed in spring, and at each point, bush crew contractors do quick visual checks of vegetation within a 10-metre radius of that point. They record cover densities of different plant types and key weed and native species. The data is collected using the Survey 123 app, mobile phone app, which uploads results instantly to a secure database. The method is designed to be fast, consistent, repeatable, and to support mapping and analysis for land management. It's not a comprehensive flora survey, so therefore we don't require botanists or ecologists. We have confidence in our bush crew contractors to accurately complete these surveys, and that is another cost-saving factor for flora surveys at such a large scale. So because the GPS location of points are tied to the aerial imagery from Sentinel-2, the points will not change, and we can resurvey the areas as much as we need. We do this on private properties wherever we can get permission, and we then use that data to create land management plans for the farmers, and we supply all of the results to them in PDF maps. However, this survey method was actually created to support Catherine Sheffield's project, which is the remote sensing of serrated tussock. So Catherine actually uses the ground data from these surveys to teach and train a computer model to read aerial imagery and predict the density of serrated tussock just from that satellite aerial imagery. The model compares the data from on-ground contractors to the visual image of the same point. And the accuracy is quite impressive and is continuing to improve. And again, this is all thank you to Catherine, who manages it every year. The two images on the left are screenshots from a phone. And this is just giving you a glimpse of how staff fill out the survey form on Survey 123. The right is the list of categories that we ask them to assess at each plot. And so each plot can take somewhere between 5 to 9 minutes to go through all of these categories. So again, they're standing in that point and looking around a 10-metre radius and filling out all of these categories. We're particularly interested in kangaroo grass, redleg grass, and also we've split native forbs between grazing tolerant and grazing sensitive. And then of course, weeds, we're very interested in serrated tussock, Chilean needlegrass, cane needlegrass, and artichoke thistle. You'll also see down the bottom that we do take ad hoc sightings as well and other observations. So there is a box here to see if they saw any golden sun moth flying, but also if they do see other species nearby, they can leave comments and also attach a photo to that as well. So in total, 8,040 hectares of land across the Western Grassland Reserve has been surveyed. So just over 5,000 hectares of that was surveyed on private property, coordinated by Wyndham before the land was acquired.
Okay, so starting in 2023, we had a 12-month window to apply a soil rehab project on a 1 hectare patch of land that had been cropped by farmers for hundreds of years, leaving the soil severely degraded. Much of Western Grassland Reserve has received similar land management practices, with around 15% having dead arable soil. Arable just meaning previously cropped. Our key question was, can we simply replant native species, or did we first need to understand what was happening beneath the surface to support long-term native growth? After conducting some soil tests, we discovered that it's not soil anymore, it's just dirt. So this means there was no fungi, extremely low biomass, and extremely high bacterial levels. To address this poor soil condition, the area was fenced and divided into 3 separate sites. We had a restoration site, a planting only site, and a control site. The control site was left outside of the fenced area. At the restoration site, mushroom compost and basalt rock dust were applied before planting 11,000 thermiter cells. You can see a picture of a thermiter cell there on the slide. These were watered in with a specially made compost tea containing living microorganisms. A liquid soil amendment was then applied to further improve soil health, and it was reapplied 2 more times over a 3-month period. The planting only site also had 11,000 thermiter cells put into the ground, but no soil treatments were applied. And lastly, the control site received no treatment and no planting. So this slide shows what changed after 12 months, comparing conditions before and after the soil rehabilitation. It looks at soil health at the top of the slide and vegetation outcomes in the table below. Okay, so the soil health at the top there. After 12 months, the restored site showed clear improvements in soil condition. So the soil pH moved closer to the ideal range for native plants. The nutrient availability increased, organic matter more than doubled, and nutrients became more balanced overall. In simple terms, the soil is now healthier, more stable, and much better able to support plant growth than it was before the works began. Okay, so the vegetation results in the table below. Vegetation was measured across 3 treatment areas, and this included the weed cover, native plant cover, bare ground, litter, and number of weed and native species. What do these results show? So the green cells in the table indicate the best result, and the orange cells indicate the poorest. The restored site performed the best. It had fewer weeds, the highest native plant cover, it had less bare ground, and greater diversity of native species. The planting only site performed poorly. It showed large areas of bare ground, low native plant cover, and fewer native species. And lastly, the control site did have the highest weed cover and low native plant cover, but it also had high litter buildup, which is very important. The key takeaway is, after those 12 months, the results clearly show that rehabilitating the soil first leads to much better native vegetation outcomes. In these soil conditions, planting alone is not effective, and in some cases, doing nothing performed better than planting without soil rehabilitation. And this is because of the percentage of bare ground, and we all know that bare ground equals weeds. And just some photos so you can see what I'm talking about. So the control site on the left shows mostly bare, compacted soil with very little plant cover, indicating poor soil condition, limited natural regeneration. And in contrast, the restored site on the right, it has noticeable native grass establishment, better ground cover, and a more stable soil surface, demonstrating the positive impact of soil rehab. And just some more photos. So the control site, again, it shows exposed compacted soil with deep surface cracking. So this indicates poor soil structure, low moisture retention, and ongoing degradation. And the restored site on the right has continuous native grass cover and fewer exposed soil patches, showing improved soil stability and healthier growing conditions.
Keeping on the theme of soil here, this slide's about our soil microbial communities within Western Grassland Reserve. So we've been fortunate enough to now know a bit more about this topic across the reserve. We've been supporting Maggie Logan, a student of La Trobe University, for the last year or so by funding and supporting her research through the DECA MSA Nature Next Door program. Maggie's study looked at whether an existing model that is used to describe changes in plants could also explain changes in the soil microbes in a threatened grassland. So she has taken and analysed hundreds and hundreds of soil samples from across the reserve on both private and public land and across all grassland states, from high-value remnant grasslands to overgrazed cattle paddocks and everything in between. Her overall goal is to understand the importance of the soil microbiome in management and restoration of grasslands. The big question being, do changes in vegetation and soil conditions associated with disturbance alter the below-ground bacterial and fungal communities? Now, this is how our grasslands are currently classed in different states. This is designed by Steve Sinclair. So we have our beginnings, start with our herb-rich grassland, to Demeter grassland, to C3 grassland, and then to either derocked or nutrient-enriched grasslands, and then on to derocked and nutrient-enriched grasslands. Now, Maggie has just simplified these states. So we've got 5 states: herb-rich, kangaroo grass, spear and wallaby grass, fertilised pasture, and serrated tussock-dominated grasslands. So, do changes in vegetation and soil conditions associated with disturbance alter bacterial and fungal communities? Maggie's outcome is yes and no. It's a maybe. Overall, above-ground vegetation wasn't strongly related to differences in soil microbial communities. However, there were differences in the bacterial and fungal diversity between the states. So serrated tussock-dominated sites actually had significantly more fungal species than other degraded sites. We know fungi and bacteria do respond to changes in the landscape, but not always in the same way as plants. Maggie's analysis is ongoing, and hopefully more specific findings will follow. And just quickly, this is a brief view of her final data here. I'm not going to go into this today, but look, if you're really keen and you want to know more, please reach out to us and we can maybe share Maggie's contact details.
We are currently in the early stages of establishing a new seed production area, which is what we refer to as an SPA. This work has been undertaken within an existing council-managed conservation reserve at the centre of Western Grassland Reserve. Positioning the SPA here allows us to work within a protected landscape while supporting broader restoration and seed supply objectives across the reserve. Initial trials are already underway and are deliberately focusing on minimal input approaches. The aim is to identify native grassland species that establish successfully under low interventive conditions and are capable of producing high quantities of viable seed. This will help inform future SPA design and improve the efficiency and sustainability of large-scale restoration efforts. The photo shown here is of the SPA itself. The area is currently enclosed by temporary fencing to manage a range of threats that could compromise plant establishment and the seed production. These threats include grazing and disturbance from goats, pigs, rabbits, kangaroos, as well as in unintentional human access. Installing fencing at this early stage is critical to protect the young plants, safeguard soil condition, and ensure the success of the trial phase. In addition to our work within council managed land, we're also running African thistle trials on a private property within Western Grassland Reserve. African thistle is a relatively new and emerging weed in this landscape, and it's not yet well researched. On this particular property, it has become the dominant species, significantly impacting land condition and productivity. The weed is continuing to spread to other parcels throughout Western Grassland Reserve, with many farmers reporting increasing infestations over the recent years. Landholders have been actively trying to manage it, but they've had limited success. As there is no clear proven herbicide or control method that consistently delivers effective results. To address this gap, our contractors have established multiple 15 metre by 15 metre trial plots across the property. Each plot is receiving a different treatment, allowing us to compare the effectiveness of various control methods under real-world conditions. These plots are being closely monitored over time to assess both short-term and long-term outcomes. We do intend to share the findings from these trials once sufficient data has been collected, either through formal reporting or broader knowledge sharing. If you are interested in the results or would like to be kept informed, please feel free to get in touch with us.
Moving on to drones now, drones and native seeds. We've been working with a wonderful landowner who has really allowed us to go full force with the restoration of one of his paddocks. So we have a 14-hectare paddock that has been severely dominated by serrated tussock for a long time now. So working with this landowner, we have removed grazing for a minimum of 2 years. We have aerially applied a low rate of flupropanate in winter of 2024, then a controlled burn of the next winter to remove all of the dead biomass. And then, thanks to the landowner's support and trust in us, we decided to be innovative with this project as well. Our next step involved direct seeding of native grasses using a drone. We want to know if we can utilise drones for large-scale direct seeding of rocky areas where traditional seeding equipment can't access. It has taken a fair bit of research and development, some trials and errors, but we successfully direct seeded about 120 kilos of native C4 grass seed, which included kangaroo, redleg, silky blue, and windmill grasses. We hope to further improve this process and bring costs down, but for now we know that this is definitely achievable. For this particular site later this year, we do plan on introducing more native C3 grasses and some wildflower seed as well.
So these images show the drone used for native seed application, along with the carrier medium used to distribute the seed. The seed mix and medium were developed by Danny from Firetail Environments and are a part of a custom design process. For detailed questions about the composition of the mix, Danny is the best person to provide further information. As shown here, the seeding drone is significantly larger than a standard drone and is purpose-built for large-scale application. It has a carrying capacity of over 50 kilograms, allowing it to apply seed and material across larger areas in a single operation. So this video shows the process of loading the native seed mix into the drone and then applying it across the property. As the drone moves across the site, it's dispersing the specially designed seed mix evenly over the landscape. It can be difficult to see the detail on camera, especially online, but the mix is being applied in a consistent pattern to ensure good coverage across the area. What we were particularly interested in seeing during this stage was how the seed landed once it hit the ground. After the application, we spent some time with Parks Victoria walking through the site to observe where the seed had settled. In many areas, the seed mix nestled amongst existing grasses, the surface litter, and soil cracks, which is exactly what we were hoping to see.
Okay, now keeping on to drones and onto digital ecology, which is a term I want to reclaim and use to describe this type of ecological work. We've been using drones to spray artichoke thistle since early 2021, and we were brainstorming ways we could improve our processes in this space. Basically, I had an idea and I rang Danny from Firetail Environments, and I basically word vomited my idea to him, but he completely understood it and he ran with it and he developed our now custom-made EcoSense software. EcoSense is a QGIS plugin designed to revolutionize the detection and treatment of artichoke thistle at a landscape scale. It automates plant identification using drone imagery and deep learning. Its outputs provide precise spatial data for weed control. This is addressing inefficiencies, including high cost and staff burnout from manual weed detection and treatment of artichoke thistle. Previously, you would just send some poor soul out with a spray rig or a knapsack in a 500+ hectare paddock and they start spot spraying artichoke thistle. And this will often result in staff burnout. We then moved on to using drones. We would use a smaller drone to capture detailed aerial imagery. And then back in the office at a computer, you would quite literally just hand draw polygons around the artichoke thistle as you click and drag the map around. Once you're finally done, you supply that shapefile to spray drone operators or other contractors who manually can fly out to the shapefile locations and spray them. Now we have a drone map, a map of parcel of land to get a high quality aerial image. Then we just simply run EcoSense over the imagery and it generates a report for us, which I will show in the next couple of slides. But just quickly, that image on the right, all of those reds are the center points of individual artichoke thistle plants. So this year we actually aim to take this even further, and we plan to use the output data to upload into a spray drone, which can then spray the artichoke thistles itself. There's no manual flying required. Not quite as simple as that, but we're going to give it a go. This is a screen recording after EcoSense has been run over this 1 hectare aerial image. So as I zoom in, you'll be able to see the pink shapefiles around the artichoke thistle plants. And then as I turn the shapefile on and off, you should be able to see its accuracy in identifying artichoke thistle as it ignores the spear thistle nearby. And as I move around, you can see more and more examples of it not picking up the spear thistle. It is accurately picking up the artichoke thistle. This is the information EcoSense produces for us. So in this 1 hectare parcel, it can tell us that there are 896 individual artichoke thistle plants. The foliage of these plants take up 226 square meters of space, with the average plant size being 0.25 meters square. This is really useful information that we can now supply to spray contractors for accurate quoting. And now we can also supply this data into a spray drone and press play and off it goes. Again, not quite as simple, but we're going to give it a go. But the data this produces is just amazing.
Over the life of the funding agreement, we delivered weed control across thousands of hectares and installed tens of thousands of plants, primarily native grasses such as Themata, along with selected wildflowers and she oaks. As mentioned earlier, we also completed surveys across more than 5,000 hectares of private land, which has been critical in developing tailored property-specific weed management plans. Across the Land Protection Grant Scheme program as a whole, both within and outside Western Grassland Reserve, we developed and delivered more than 300 grants. These included detailed land management plans outlining the scope of works and clearly defined benchmarks for each property. While ecological burning can be particularly challenging due to the rocky terrain and the inherent risk associated with fire, we nevertheless successfully completed 136 hectares of burns. In addition, as previously noted, more than 200 kilograms of native seed was distributed across private properties within the Western Grassland Reserve.
I also want to pass on a really big thank you and acknowledgement of our amazing contractors and all of their staff who make all of this happen, who work with us and the various land managers within and beyond the reserve. There are so many extra steps required when working on private property. And we are so thankful to these crews who take it all in their stride and complete all of this work successfully. This partnership between Wyndham City Council and the DECA MSA team is proving that local government can help lead grassland restoration at scale, preparing this land for future public management. By combining our ability to be innovative and reactive with our incentive and education offers, we have been able to create a replicable model for large-scale land management, which is now the same model used at the City of Greater Geelong and Melbourne City Council. It has been a great opportunity, and we're proud of all the work that we've done and the great relationships that we've made with the local farmers and all other land managers within the area. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to our whole presentation tonight. And I will just say now that if we don't get through all questions or you'd like to reach out and talk more, please feel free to send us an email. And I will also do a quick plug for our Little River Weeds Expo, which is happening on Sunday, the 1st of March this year. So if you're free, come along.
Brilliant. Thank you both. That was so refreshing to see an unashamedly uplifting presentation about the Western Grassland Reserve. It's nice to see all of that really positive outcomes. It's no wonder, yes, they're generally accepted as being one of the success stories of the MSA program. I suppose I'd like to wonder, like, it seems like you do so much, and it seems like you're the people who are actually doing this innovating, and the Parks Victoria and like the blocks aren't necessarily getting like the soil treatments. They're not those sort of things. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is there are there areas to Parks Victoria doing stuff? What's going on?
No, fair question. There's a really big difference in managing parcels when they're in private ownership as to when they're owned and managed by state government, by Parks Victoria. So when it's in private ownership, there are far less loopholes, basically. Well, there are far less rules that we need to follow while it's in private ownership and being actively farmed. Whereas once it's protected native grassland managed by Parks Victoria, there are a lot more rules and regulations in place. And I do know that these barriers take years to bring down to be able to start implementing these practices. And that is happening with the Parks Victoria team. In the meantime, us at Wyndham working on private property where we've got, great willing landowners, we can give it a go already.
Yeah, so the good work can get done before the MSA and Parks Victoria sort of get to the block, as it were. Okay, let's have a look at the chat. There's things. I'm sure there's why can't I see anything? There we go. Andrew Cox has a question. Do you and or how do you integrate this large-scale management in areas where there are records of threatened species within the Western Grassland Reserve? So is applying, How do you the rules different for you in that regard too?
The rules are different on private properties that are being actively farmed. We take it obviously into consideration with all the works that we do, ensuring that all habitat is managed appropriately and habitat is left remaining for species to call home. Unfortunately, also being private property, there is a lack of data out there. So often we don't actually know if there are threatened species out there. We can assume. So it does affect our decisions and how hard we might go in a certain paddock or not. And it really helps us prioritize certain areas where we do have those higher values. We will put more intensive work into those areas so that they don't take those large landscape-wide treatments. we really do protect the smaller, high-value areas that we can identify and we know do have threatened species.
Anne Smith asks if, when you were talking about fungi, bacteria, biomass, etc., within the soil, is there also a measurement of carbon content going on there? And do you know how the carbon content of the soil is related to all of that?
Related to, unsure. We did get the carbon content measured, and the carbon content dramatically increased after the 12-month soil rehab trial. What the actual numbers were, I don't know. What that means, I'm not sure. But we've got the data to show that change. Yes.
Fantastic. What else? Other people, questions, please. We're running short. Otherwise, I will keep asking them. So your spa production, what can you tell us a bit more about that? So it's all in ground. It's an in-ground spa by the looks of it. And what species are you trialing there? Are they just grasses, or you've got forbs going there? Yeah.
It's a mixture of grasses. We're looking for, as Sarah said in the presentation, really minimal intervention, minimal impact. What could we grow at scale easily without potentially having to rehab too much soil and too much land? So the site that it's on is pretty a low value. It doesn't really have any value, so we're not digging up the soil or anything like that. So it's literally just started. The fence has gone up. That's it. That's where we're at. But it's going to continue occurring over the next few years. And it's going to be really, really well monitored and tracked, and to both see the germination success within the SPA, but also once that seed is produced, when we put it out on site, we'll also be testing germination rates and things like that. So that one's a watch this space.
Yeah, it's fantastic that the MSA is funding some actual native spa production. It's a small step, but a very good step.
Yeah, it's small scale, but it's a start. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have a question here about burning, and how you manage the burns to not impact things like GSM or lizards or whatever.
Yeah, look, our burnings are usually pretty small scale. We didn't, burn 136 hectares all at once. We're doing really, generally pretty small patches. Our biggest one ever to date was the 14 hectare paddock in the one go. And we usually, that particular one was done in winter. So timing and just we won't do an entire property. We're doing small patches that we can manage beyond the burning as well. So there's always escape routes. We've also done mosaic burning a fair bit as well too. But again, we're working on private properties where we don't have that data. We don't have anything like that. We don't have the surveys. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose burning on private property is also a lot easier than organising a burn on Parks Victoria land. Yes,
It is.
indeed. And it's great that it's small scale stuff too, so that you are actually getting a good mosaic there to sort of produce a bit more diversity into the landscape. Yeah. A couple of people want to know, what is compost tea?
That's a good question. It's basically composted material, but with some sort of microorganisms living in there that the dirt, it's not soil, it's dirt. At our soil rehab site, we confirmed with the soil experts that it's literally dirt now. It's not soil. Soil has lots of organisms within it. This had basically nothing, I think, nothing. So we wanted to reintroduce these microorganisms. So we were working with a couple of experts in that field, and they made this living compost heap to reintroduce it back into this small patch of grassland that we planted the cells into, and they require to live around the roots of the thermita plants that we were planting, but also we had to feed the microorganisms and get them to re-establish into the soil, so they're self-generating beyond our project timeline, which was only the 12 months. Hence also why we added basalt rock. So again, that was a de-rocked grassland. It was arable, cropped for a long time. So we're reintroducing living organisms back in there. And what that actually is, I couldn't tell you. It's a brown liquid tea. It all kind of works together, and we fed them with the crushed basalt rock. It helps them break down the organic materials to actually feed successfully. So yeah, that one I'm not an expert in, and I certainly had help from a few soil people. So sorry, I can't answer that one too well.
The basalt rock was actually food for the microorganisms in this case.
Yeah, they needed the crushed basalt rock to help them absorb the food. It was part of the process of breaking things down.
Cassie Price would like to know some more information about in-kind contributions that landholders do. Can you give us some examples of what sort of things that covers?
Yeah, definitely. So with the in-kind contributions, instead of handing us money, let's say, they'll complete a service. So an example that we've had recently would be, we had a farmer who had boxthorn and serrated tussock infestations on his farm. We decided to go with the serrated tussock because it was quite dense. So we got our contractors in, got a quote, and let's say they quoted $10,000. The farmer would then have to contribute $1,500. But instead of actually giving us the money, he went and then used his own machinery in his own time, and he went and pulled out that infestation of boxthorn I mentioned earlier. So at the end of the day, we still had $1,500 worth of weed control works completed, but he did not hand us any money. Because we do find that working with these farmers, as Vanessa mentioned earlier, that if it's not their land and they're leasing, they're not going to put money into it, but they will put their time into it.
Yeah. Just on that, so what proportion of the landholders, can you give us an overview of the types of landholders that are across the Western Grassland Reserve? How many are the big land bankers? How many are the small landholders of 12-month leases? Can you just paint us a picture of what the landholders are like?
Most of the land is leased. I'll say that. Look, most of it's leased. Yeah.
Okay.
Is leased out to local farmers.
Yeah. And you only reach people via your mail out and some word of mouth sort of stuff. That must be very difficult. You don't have, I don't suppose you can go knock on people's doors or anything. Is there
not
no
out there
way of improving take up?
No, we don't knock on doors. We do usually go by word of mouth. So as local government, we do have access to property owner details and their postal addresses. However, we have no way of accessing any contact information for leaseholders. So if they don't respond, the landowners don't respond to us, we don't have any way of finding that information.
Yeah. Tough gig, unfortunate, isn't it? Because it would be great to get hold of that land. I suppose many of them, the landholders, just actively don't want you anywhere near their land. What sort of percentage of the landscape would that be?
Pretty high. 50-50.
50? Yeah. Okay. Bastards. All right.
Yeah.
Your seed stock, genetic provenance, are you paying
Yeah.
much attention to where your seed stock comes from?
Yeah, we are. So in the SPA, that will all be from locally sourced stock. Our Thermita planting and the soil rehab site was all sourced from down the road from the site. All the seed and grown in our nursery, not in our nurseries, in multiple nurseries. And the wildflowers that we've also planted into some high value sections, they're also from locally sourced seed as well. Yeah. But it is the large scale grass is not locally sourced. So when we're talking hundreds of kilos of native seed, it's not locally sourced. We're at a stage where there's not enough seed on the market that is locally available. So we are extending our search efforts so that we can get the amount of seed that we need to start rehabbing this land. So basically the seed is sourced from a similar environment to Little River, so that low rainfall sort of area, we will take that seed.
Okay.
We will take it. Anyone here got any seed? We'll take it. We're really interested in the native C4 grasses because where we've applied flupropanate, the native C4s will actually continue to grow and thrive even with the presence of that herbicide in the soil. So we go all in on our C4s, which, so they've sourced much further out across the state. Yeah.
Rupert McDonald would like to know if you found any differences between spray burn compared to burn spray with respect to smashing serrated tussock in particular, but I'm sure everything in general.
Both seem to work pretty well. I've heard from a lot of people that you shouldn't burn after you spray because it's going to kill off some of the herbicide. But so far we found that it continues working beyond the burn. We'll continue to monitor long term and see how they go. But honestly, we've seen success both ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on another technical weedy matter, do you take into account the weed seed bank when prior to reseeding the C4 grasses? So do you ever utilize another herbicide in addition to flup to top burn weedy grass species, or is fire the preferred method? Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a ridiculous weed seed bank in all of that soil out there. We're well aware of that. I get burning's a method to literally remove all of that biomass. So when you've got tussock that is like decades old, it's thick, you can barely walk through it. There's no chance you'll see the ground. All that foliage needs to be burnt. So we do apply spray topping when we want to prevent seeding, as farmers do in certain areas. But for control, if we really want to rehab the land, that's where we do need to get rid of that biomass to expose that soil and get that seed back in the ground. Where we're not ready to treat it, that's when we utilize spray topping just to prevent the seeding forming.
Okay. So very good. I think we're pretty much, are we at the end of our questions? I think we think we might actually be. Does anyone else have questions they want to throw at Vanessa and Sarah before perhaps we start to wind up?
Sorry, I'm just
Rose,
trying to find.
always.
I was just wondering, and this is contrary to what Adrian just said, but I'm just wondering whether it'd be worth, giving a bit of publicity to some of the good farmers. If 50% of them are, positive, whether it'd be worth having a little story in the paper about that. Might give some of the others, the idea. It encourages good behavior.
You're onto it. We've started that process. Honestly, they're a bit shy. So we've offered it to them. We've actually, that footage that you saw in our presentation of the drone, been using a videographer. We are going to, the plan is to generate a grassland video, literally is what you just said. It's about the good news stories of what's actually happening, what we're doing out there, because this isn't known really by anyone how much work is happening out there.
Yeah.
And the landowners that are willing to participate, we're wanting to do an interview. So we're currently trying to find someone that will say yes.
Fantastic. And I think it's wonderful because we've seen the graphs that show that the quality of the grasslands going down, despite the fact that, some of it's now in public ownership. And so the fact that you're actually reversing that is just wonderful news, I think. So well
Yeah,
done.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I think Rosemary speaks for everyone here. So thank you both very much. That was excellent, and yeah, well, hopefully we'll hear more about your adventures in the years to come. I'm sure we will, as you continue to lead the way in the management of the Western Grassland Reserve. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone in the comment section too.
to 6:35, so perhaps we should get a wriggle on. Yeah, good. There it goes. Hello everyone.